Hi, Darlene. Sorry to make you panic a bit being late. I'm sure you were like, what's going on?
Not at all. Not at all. No.
Kelsey, who was supposed to moderate in the back, she had a childcare issue come up, and I wasn't home. I was in between sessions. I had to run to the campus. Anyway, here I am.
No worries, but isn't that always the way, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Life happens.
Yeah. So you had sent me a couple of poll questions, and I wasn't able to get them into the system to be able to run them like you saw during the panel, but it doesn't mean those questions couldn't be asked. So another way to handle that is I think there is a poll. There's just the one, how do you identify, just so you have a sense of who's in the room. I have one of those polls prepared, but your other questions, there were some great questions there. We could ask them and ask people to comment in the chat.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah. Well, there's Wendy. So Wendy is actually going to be the person introducing. So I'm gonna just be in the background as Kelsey. I'm the Kelsey for this session.
Okay.
I'm the Josh.
The Josh being.
You're the Josh Kelsey.
Yeah, I'm the Michelin Josh Kelsey. And Wendy actually will be doing the introduction and the thank you at the end, and I will monitor chat. So that's what I can do. So let me know, Darlene, if you want me to ask any of those questions, or are you just going to ask those questions you sent me? What do you think?
I think it's good to have someone else's voice during a presentation. So yeah, I mean, if you want to pop in anytime with a question, then that would be great. Like from the ones that I sent you. Yeah.
Perfect. I will do that.
Open to everything and anything.
Yeah, I know that we're just learning how to use these polls, but we're finding that people really do enjoy them. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow, and I've reformatted it so that it involves like a trivia, like a question. Like when we start giving data and information, instead of just giving it to them, to do a poll, like how many people, like, what do you think is X? To get the group involved, that will lead into the presentation. So I'm trying to work on that too before my presentation tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Yeah, I haven't done many polls either for exactly that reason. I'm not as familiar with how to create them, but I know it's on my task list for 2022 to do more of that. Yeah,
to try to make it our presentation more interactive. I think Zoom webinar, like you have to have a certain level of your subscription has to be a certain type of subscription to unlock all of those like reminders, poll options, and all that kind of stuff. So I know that's why we're using Josh's account. It's our corporate Canada or corporate account, and Josh is our director, marketing manager. So he holds the license for the whole college. And we could rename ourselves, but we just don't want that to affect his account that he uses all the time. Yeah, but there's so many amazing tools out there to make online presentations more interactive. I think one of the things we'd like to do is help teach that, like help teach how do you can do breakout rooms. There's a whole bunch of techniques you can use.
Whiteboards and
we use whiteboards with our student. We have a whiteboard app that we use when we do brainstorming. We do breakout groups as well. We use that. We also do a lot of trivia with our students just for fun and building. And everybody downloads the app on their phone, and we keep a leaders board and all that kind of stuff. So we do a lot of that kind of thing, but yeah, it's definitely we got some really great feedback from one of our presenters saying that it would be really handy when we register people for a virtual event to ask what type of technology they'll be using to connect. And in our case, we also have people who are doing it by telephone, which reminds me, I have to find that list because I have to dial people in the background. And then providing them with a tip sheet, troubleshooting FAQs, tip sheet to engage in what the program is like. And because you can even, prior to something like this, go in and do a tutorial, and we could give those links to people. So imagine if everybody had gotten that with their registration.
Yeah.
Would have been hugely helpful. But we're getting a lot of great feedback. We're just like, bottom line, we're not used to working in this way. We're all really learning, especially what not to do.
Well, and the other thing too is it's evolving so
Yeah.
quickly, right? As people are becoming so much more comfortable and so many more people are using it. So that changes the landscape as well. As soon as you have more people on board, and so well, I personally really like virtual platforms myself, but I know a lot of people don't still. So
Yeah, they're here to stay, that's for sure.
oh, 100%, I think, especially with some potentially hybrid models for the workplace going forward.
Yeah.
It's so funny, Stephanie. It's your name, but it's Kelsey's photo. Are you trying to freak me out?
No, it's me.
Oh, it says Stephanie though.
What?
Is the name.
That's weird that, it does, you're right. You know why? Because I had Steph forward me the link.
See, that happened to somebody else earlier today when they got forwarded a link. Yeah, you're using Stephanie's link, I guess.
Yeah. Thanks,
So are
Steph.
you ever going to be yourself, Stephanie, on
No problem.
Kelsey, on any of these? Oh, there's Stephanie's there too. We've got two Stephanies now. We got a Josh and a Michelin. This is just making it quite exciting. I was just realizing that I had to find the list of the call-ins, which is a whole other thing. That's been working relatively well, like Kelsey, like the call-in people.
Yeah, except for the last session, I had 3 call-ins and I called all 3, and I got a busy signal on all 3, so none of them attended. I tried again, but again, no dice. So
Yeah, and I think there's ways we need to engage those who are on the phone better. It's almost like the people on the phone during this virtual is almost like when you do a live session and you have people who Zoom in, the Zoom people kind of get ignored and the people in the room get, sort of all the attention. Again, these are these skills, right, that we have to figure out.
I've attended a meeting recently that was exactly like that. It was a hybrid. It was Zoom and in person, and boy, that's challenging.
I had to lead one of those. It was a bit of a difficult scenario. Yeah.
One of the best tips I had on that was that you have actually a facilitator, like your main facilitator, and then you have the Zoom facilitator. So somebody who's responsible for engaging with the people on Zoom as a secondary facilitator. And that's how it's done best. So then there's somebody reading, messages, or, being able to engage that group, seeing their body language, and so on and so forth, which I think is brilliant. I think that's what you need to do, because it's just like this, when you're the presenter and the only thing you need to do is present, and you have somebody in the back handling the technical and managing your chat, it's just so much more successful, I think. All right, we're getting close, and I know it's me. I have to pay attention. Usually it's Kelsey who gets everybody going. So just so that you know, Darlene, Wendy's going to start us off. And Wendy, give it, like, you'll see the participant numbers going up as we go to live, but give it a little bit of time so people are connected and I can get those call-in people before you officially start. And then we can start with before Darlene actually starts, we can do the poll to find out who's in the room. You can just say, we'll get to know you in the room a little bit before we start. And then, and on that note, I just wanted to give you an approximate. I think the last time I checked, the registration was at roughly, which I'm tracking all of this. We had 18 registered, which is one of the highest session registrations. So it'll be interesting to see. It's interesting, really interesting, because our panel.
And I'm sharing, I think, right?
Oh, I have to make
I think
sure
I'm the one sharing the presentation as well.
Yeah, you can share your own.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I'm gonna, all panelists.
you just have to make Darlene
Yeah, I'm actually allowing all the panelists to share, so I know I can do that too. There we go. And that makes it even easier.
Is it Samantha or Kelsey you're putting up the polls?
It's going to be me.
Oh, you, okay.
Yeah, yeah. I might, yeah, I know. And it's Michelin, aka Josh. And you actually know Josh, or do you? Are you somebody who, because we used to work at the Lens. A lot of people who are at the OHT know him from the Lens.
I know the name.
Yeah, he was marketing and all that stuff there. All right, we're almost out. It's 3. I better get the party started. Okay, everybody else should have their cameras off and muted.
Okay.
Start webinar. All right, it is starting. Just give it a little bit of time.
Okay.
You should be good to start.
Okay. So welcome everyone to our afternoon session. As we get everyone online here this afternoon, I'd like to take a minute and ask that we have a poll posted up that'll help us get an understanding of who's joining us this afternoon. So if I can ask someone to launch that, please. So just hopefully you've seen it come up on your screen, and if you can just take a minute and fill that out, that'd be greatly appreciated. Okay, and as it's being filled out, I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Wendy Smith, and I am the executive lead of the Nipissing Wellness Ontario Health Team here in the North Bay region. And I'm very happy to be here this afternoon to have the privilege of introducing our speaker. So Darlene Tripp is going to be speaking to us this afternoon. Darlene has had a 34-year career in the finance industry and then decided to create a personal or a private business to support older adults in their transitions in the community. So thank you for joining us, Darlene. Just before we turn the mic over to you, though, I'd also like to take a minute and just do a quick land acknowledgement. So we would like to begin by acknowledging that we are hosting today's meeting on land that has been inhabited by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial. The North Bay and Parry Sound District Health Unit sits on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe peoples within the lands that are protected by the Robinson-Huron Treaty of 1850 and is used by the members of the Nipissing First Nation. We acknowledge that we are also situated on unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation and the settlement of the Métis Nation. As individuals and as organizations, we are dedicated to honoring Indigenous history and culture and committed to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect with all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. So thank you very much. And I'll ask if we can have the poll pulled down.
Yeah, we'll just end the poll now and I'll share with you momentarily. We had about 90 people participate, so that's a great participation rate. And yeah, you can see that 80% of the participants are older adults. We do have a student with us, and yeah, you can see we do have people who are professionals supporting in the community and also caregivers. So we have a wide representation.
Excellent. So thanks for filling out the poll, everyone. That's great to see who's the breadth and depth of people joining us this afternoon. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic and the virtual stage over to our speaker, Darlene.
Thank you so much, Wendy and Michelin. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen. And just confirm, if someone can confirm for me that they can see my screen, that would be wonderful.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining today. And really want to thank the Village and Michelin for including me in this week's presentations. I'm excited to share with you some of the information that Hello Darlene has to offer, and just really continue the conversation as it's been happening all of this week. And for some reason, it's auto sharing. I don't know why, but so I apologize for that. So really, I want to talk about anchor versus asset. So when we think of aging, the anchor is our home. That's the place we love, the place we're comfortable in, but it's also our largest asset. So when we're looking at any sort of transition or relocation, I like to think of it as plan A and B. And there is a C, but I don't have that listed on here because C is emergency relocation. So I really advocate for either plan A or for plan B, which is either to age at home or to plan for a transition of some kind. And it definitely includes that largest asset if we own a home. So if we talk about plan A, which is aging at home, which we all know the majority of Canadians would prefer to age at home these days. Plan A is really, it's a portfolio of strategies. So it's also a fluid and moving continuum. We need to have a variety of strategies in place to allow us to be able to age at home. And there may also be the need for major or minor modifications for our home. And also for us to consider how any either vision, hearing loss, potentially arthritis, how all of those types of things may impact the needs that we may have at home. And also the need that we may have for outsourcing any support services. So if we just take a minute and imagine our home, if we close our eyes and we take in what's around us in our home and imagine the future. And if your mobility changes or your needs change, what might be the kinds of things that we would have to consider to remain safe at home and to remain independently at home for as long as we possibly can? So I like to use the acronym SAFE, and S is for safety, and then access, and fits your needs, and ease of use. So it's a really easy acronym to remember, but I think it really helps us to imagine what we might need to make amendments to within our home and the different kinds of community supports that might have to go along with each of those different categories. So then imagine the different spaces within your home, all of the inside spaces, your bathroom, your kitchen, your bedroom, and any outside areas. So if we think of the bathroom, then sometimes we may need a handlebar. In a kitchen, consider maybe the microwave. Where is it located? Is it easy to access? Is it up high? And in your bedroom, consider things like, where is the bathroom located? Is it easily accessible? Are there rugs on the floor? Any other safety hazards potentially in the middle of the night that might make it more difficult? And then when you're thinking of outside the home, think about lighting and railings. And those are just a few ideas for you to consider when you're imagining your home, both outside and inside, and what kinds of amendments you might have to make within those spaces to remain in your home independently and for as safe or for as long as possible.
Darlene, you had a question here that we could ask. I'm wondering, is there any way to pause your advancing on your PowerPoint? While I ask the polling question, I'll ask the question. We'll see, get some engagement. Yeah. Maybe you can figure out that option.
I just paused that and I apologize for that. I don't know why it's doing that. Yeah, so I apologize for that, but it looks like it stopped at this point, Micheline. Yeah, so if you could do a quick poll, that would be great.
All right, so we're going to ask you to use your chat box to answer the question, or if you want to raise your hand, you can share by, I'll be able to unmute you. This is Micheline, by the way. So who can think of an accommodation that they would need to make in one of the areas in your home that Darlene just mentioned? Can anybody think, when you're thinking in terms of long-term aging at home, under these categories, what an area you may need to adjust in your home? So if you take a second just to answer in chat, that would be great, or raise your hand. All right, we've got some answers coming in. Please share. So Florence, move laundry facility upstairs. Yeah, I bet you, Darlene, that's a common one, right?
Yeah, that's an excellent one to bring up because not only does it involve relocation of something like laundry facilities, but it also speaks to stairs, which is often a common dilemma in homes because many homes are multi-level.
Anybody else with one to share, an area that they might need to think about long-term in their home? I know I can share one. My front entry has a lot of stairs. So I need to think about long-term, maybe some sort of system to get inside. And we got another comment too, bathroom, a tub you don't have to jump to go inside. That is a good one. That's from Seneda. And then Teresa, ensure extension cords so they're not a trip hazard. Yeah, that's something we were talking some major renovations, but that's a basic one, right? To think about removing those trip hazards like extension cords.
Yeah, and the bathtub is a great example as well, because if you're having mobility issues, just a lot of tubs are very high these days. So just getting in and out of those tubs may require all kinds of additional support around the tub area. So, and it's also important to think about, you know, if it's a modification like a tub, it could be something that is costly. So would you have to plan for that in advance financially to be able to make those kinds of changes within any of those spaces?
Couple of additional comments, some really great stuff coming in. So another one about lighting, just especially lighting at night. So when we're talking about preparing for aging at home, that's a great one. We also have Janice Reed, who mentions a chairlift to get onto a second level or to get upstairs. And then Teresa, another one, purchase an easy in and out, easy load vehicle. So thinking about your vehicle, right? These are all great, great tips, eh, Darlene?
Yeah, they're amazing. And, you know, it's great that you're all thinking about different kinds of spaces within your home. And bathrooms and kitchens are often some of the more dangerous locations. And so it's really important to be thinking about accessibility within all of those spaces, and not accessibility right now, but what it might look like in the future. So if you were to be having some sort of mobility changes, how would that change those spaces for you?
So I guess, Darlene, that has everybody thinking in terms of this planning you're talking about, right? Starting to think future thinking and starting to plan out all the steps to aging at home. So these are things for us to start putting into our plans.
Yeah, and these are just very high level thoughts around some of these topics. You know, you can go a lot more in depth with each of the individual spaces within your home. You can have an assessment done on your home to determine what specific things might be required. In 2021, there was actually a grant through CRA provided for any accommodations that you might need to make within your home. So there is a little bit of time left this year. If anybody was wanting to do that, you can earn a tax credit. So it's well worth looking into. And constantly just be aware of whether or not there are incentives such as that through CRA, because this is an important factor if you're wanting to remain in your home, is to consider what changes you might have to make in the future.
So I have two other comments before you go on. This is great, lots of great participation. So here's another nice tip or consideration: more frequently used dishes. For example, in the kitchen at lower levels, not in high cupboards. So just how you organize yourself in your space to make it easier, so you're not climbing on ladders or those sort of things. And then Teresa also provided, sort of echoing what you said, research for available grants and financial support programs for changes as required, because there are some of those opportunities.
Yeah, and I also want to add, there's also some really cool technology coming out. For example, you can install controls on your stove that will auto turn off if they've been left on. There's just some amazing stuff that's, coming forward. And so, looking into those kinds of things, if you're either supporting someone or if you're looking to be in your own home and just wanting to make sure that those kinds of areas are safe, it's worthwhile looking into all of those additional, I'll call them robotic type of controls that are coming out. They're very cool. Let me know, Micheline, if there are any other comments or if we can proceed.
Sorry, there's one more. Bottom freezer fridge for easier access to refrigerator portion. I love that. My mom has one. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another great idea. I just love all of those comments. That's fantastic. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't know what. I think I might have to reshare again, so I'm going to just. Okay, can you see this again, Micheline?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So one of the other pieces I wanted to cover around planning to age at home is really planning out in advance the potential services that you might require, and really be considering what sort of budget would be in place for yourself, considering the kinds of resources that you might need. So, for example, if you feel you may all of a sudden need some meals at home or housekeeping services, maybe you need someone to help you with outside yard work. Those are all the kinds of things to be considering when you're planning for services in advance, so that you have an idea of what your entire costs would be, and so that you can compare them to what your costs are currently. The other thing is who's on your support team. So, it takes a village to raise a family, and it takes a village as well sometimes to support an older adult if they're wanting to live at home. And so really, consider who are the different people on your support team, whether those are outside services that you're going to be engaging, whether it's family, neighbors, friends, all of those different people. And it's important for your family members to know who's on your support team. So they may not necessarily know, for example, if there's a neighbor that's always helping you or a friend that's always coming over and helping you. And again, just like we just spoke about, what kinds of accommodations would your home potentially require in the future? And so you want to consider all of these different categories when you're looking at budgeting. And the most important thing I would say is expect the unexpected to happen. So even if you have a plan in place, an unexpected event could change things dramatically. And so you really just want to consider that anything could change at any time. And so a plan just sort of helps everybody be in the loop of what you're looking for and what kind of support that you'd be looking for. I really apologize for this auto slide. I'm not quite sure why it's doing that, but.
So you had another question here. This is more of a yes or no, or yes, if any. I wonder how many of the group currently have a documented plan communicated to family in place. Does anybody have that in the group? So if you're just using the chat again or raising your hand, if you have a plan, let us know.
Yeah, when we're speaking about a plan, I really want you to think about a comprehensive plan, one that speaks about not only aging in your own home and the kinds of resources that you may need, but also if you were to relocate. So thinking of both plan A and plan B, and if you have communicated that plan.
I think you're touching on something pretty great, because I don't think we have nobody who's responded that they have one in place yet. I know I don't.
I think this is quite common, you know, and we can't plan for everything in life. Life, does happen, but planning really just does help support anybody who might be a caregiver in your life, or your family members, your potential power of attorney. It really just helps support any of those individuals with what your wishes are, and the things that you're looking for. Like, I know my mom, for example, said to me, don't ever put me in a bachelor, Darlene. And it's good that she told me that, because if she would have never been that specific, I would maybe have thought that a bachelor would be okay for her at some point. And then she explained to me the reason why she didn't want to be in that kind of environment. And that really meant a lot to me, because it really helped me understand the reason why she thought that way, and what she wanted or didn't want in place.
So we have one person who's responded. So Teresa said, I had a plan and I followed through. I have indicated and written my wishes as an addendum to my will. Also given verbal instructions to those who need to know.
I love that. Thank you for sharing.
All right, I think you're good to go.
And for some reason, it continually.
You could even leave it in this format. Not ideal, but at least it's not skipping
Yeah,
on you.
I think I might have to just, yeah, which is fine. So we've talked about just a few things. Plan A, which is, aging at home. There's so many different pieces. Really, we could speak for hours on end about Plan A. There are so many different factors. But Plan B is also important because sometimes we plan to age at home, and then some form of emergency might happen, or a change might happen in our life, and we have to consider Plan B. And so I always encourage all of my clients to have both Plan A and Plan B in place. And this would be whether or not you would transition to an alternative living accommodation. That could be a retirement living facility. It could be just to a smaller location like an apartment. It could be relocating to a family home. But what I really want you to consider is, how does Plan B change both your assets and your income? And how does that therefore then change your budget as well? And when we are looking at Plan B, that also impacts the contents in your home and the need to downsize and potentially, make a fairly large move. This information is also really important to share, as is with Plan A. It's important to share with family members and with your power of attorney, so that they have a good idea of what your Plan B is in place. And a good example of that is, if we just look in our local community, the retirement living facilities that are offered here are all beautiful. We're so lucky. But at the same time, they're all entirely different. They all have a completely different culture. They all offer very different things. And so it would be really important to share which facility is the most important to you. So what's your, choice number one, your choice number two, and what are the reasons why? And it could have a lot to do with just the culture within that particular living facility that appeals to you and feels a lot more like home or like your community. So that gives you a little bit about Plan B. And I know, Micheline, we had a question in there about if anyone is considering relocation.
Yes, I'm just also looking. Somebody said they might have a solution in chat to your slideshow. I think in your slideshow menu, there's an option to go manual. That little red box that's showing, I think if you, yeah, that one. And I think there's an, where it's, I think it says where it says custom. Oh yeah, see where it says automatic on the right there? You can.
Yeah, for some reason though, it's not letting me go there.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Good times. So the person had the right menu option, but we don't have a work through. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, so the question on the Plan B transition is, who finds the thought of relocation overwhelming and doesn't know where to start? Is that the question? right?
Yes.
So
yes,
who finds
that's
the thought of relocating overwhelming and doesn't know where to start? So in your chat, you can agree, disagree, say me. I'm in the middle of moving right now, actually. And so I can tell you in the middle of the move, it is quite overwhelming.
Well, moves are listed at the top of one of the major stressors in life. It's one of the top transitions. I think it's the top 3. So, it's a pretty large life event that occurs, whether we're just relocating from one location to another, or whether we're downsizing. It's all part and parcel of the same thing.
I have to share this so far out of all of the comments in the symposium, Mary Stokes is the winner. And she says, start now by throwing stuff out.
Yay, Mary.
Yeah, yay, Mary. I think that's wise words for all of us, right? Start downsizing now. So Janice says, I would find it overwhelming. Teresa, if it is overwhelming to the point of not being able to do what needs doing, that's when you need to get help.
Yeah. And the
Great
reason
comment.
just let me know, Micheline, when if we have any more comments before I continue.
Yeah, go ahead. I think that's it.
Okay, yeah. And the reason I'm tying Plan B into an aging at home plan is because decluttering and downsizing is a huge part of aging independently at home in a safe way. I can honestly say I have been in many, many homes of older adults to help with the decluttering and downsizing process. And I see lots of safety hazards that the individual may not necessarily see. Because as you know, when we live in our home for a long period of time, we don't always see things the exact same way. Sometimes things are almost clouded, and we're just surrounded by everything that we love. So we don't always have that objective point of view of what could potentially become a problem going forward. And so to me, aging at home and the transition and decluttering piece are very closely connected, because really your plan could change from A to B at any time, or it could remain in Plan A, which is aging at home, but your need to declutter and downsize could become more important if you, for example, have mobility issues. So one of the questions that I get asked most often are the costs, right? If you consider the costs of relocation to a retirement community, it can feel very overwhelming because it seems as if the costs are very expensive on a monthly basis. And a lot of times that prevents us from considering a move or considering relocation. We don't always consider that asset that we have as part of this transition in our life and how we would utilize that asset. And where you want to move to as well is a huge piece. In our community, the costs are very similar from one location to the next, for the most part for basic accommodations. But at the same time, some people just want to relocate, for example, to an apartment or to a condo. And so it's really important to just consider what the cost would be overall if you relocate versus the costs for you to stay at home currently. Also, who's on your downsize team? So that could be family, could be friends, it could be a professional like myself. A lot of times I think it was Janet that mentioned that, it's overwhelming to know where to start. And a lot of times my clients will say to me, Darlene, I just don't know where to start. And I'll help them with where to start and then provide them with guidance on how to move forward. It can be a very long process depending on the support that you have and your mobility and the time that you have to be able to do this. But it's a very important process because then if you ever do have to relocate, it just makes the process so much easier. I really want you to consider as well when you're considering relocation or aging at home, this is important for both, is just the importance of ethnic, cultural, and religious facilities being accessible and available to you. And that's a huge factor in where we want to relocate, how that retirement living facility feels to you. And I would encourage everybody, if you haven't, go and visit all of them locally. Each one has a completely different feeling. It's a completely different culture. And you will automatically know when you walk in the building, you know, these are my people. This is my place. Like, it will resonate with you. So if you have not yet visited retirement living communities locally, I would encourage you to do so well in advance of when you might potentially need to, just so that you have an idea of what's available in our community. So lots to think about here as well. You know, each of these individual questions could be a presentation on their own. And a lot of times as well, I will encourage clients to, you know, do a budget for what's currently happening right now in your home as you're aging at home. And then do a budget if you were to age at home and you were requiring community resources. And then do a third budget if you were having to relocate. What would that look like? And also, what would you have to draw from any assets? And then that will really give you a really great perspective on what direction you're hoping to go in and what you're feeling most comfortable about.
So Darlene, I have a couple of comments now.
Yeah.
So Janice, I've been downsizing for years, still working on stuff from my mother's home. And isn't that is in the cusp of it for a lot of us? It's inheriting other people's things over the years and having to deal with that as well. And then we also have a comment about maybe helping with your slideshow. We have somebody else making a ditch attempt to last ditch attempt. So if we can, I agree with this. I think maybe if you stop the sharing and go back and close your PowerPoint and then open it again without sharing first, and make sure it's not in automation mode. Everybody's rooting for you in the background here, Darlene.
And you know, I can honestly say, I think what's happened is I had a previous presentation and it was in automatic, and I think that might be what's happening. So I'm
defaulted to it, right?
Yeah, I think it defaulted. So I'm gonna just give me a second and I'm gonna go ahead, and Micheline, maybe you can let me know what's happening in the chat while I'm doing this. Yeah.
So I'll just bring up chat again here. So we have another, decluttering can feel better when we're able to give to other people and organizations who could benefit. I think that's a really, really great point. And if we're doing it in a stressful situation where it has to be done quickly, we don't always have those options. So I think the starting and planning to do that decluttering and downsizing in advance where you have time to make those connections is a great idea. Teresa, do your children and family a huge favor. Give them the gift of taking care of weeding out your own stuff while you still can. That is the best gift my parents gave to me, and I'm doing the same for my family and children.
I love that, Teresa. Thank you so much for sharing that.
So I guess it didn't work.
It didn't work. No, I'm so sorry. But yeah, so I think I'm going to go back to the other version just because that way it doesn't auto-populate. And again, I'm so sorry.
So then the last comment, we have a couple more in chat while you do that. Janice says, I think younger generations may not want to be saddled with our stuff. They have their own. And as a sandwich generation, I don't want to store my kids' stuff, nor do I want to take care of my parents' stuff. Shout out to the sandwich generation who are dealing with all sides of that clutter situation. And then Charlotte Hives or Lacha says, this session feels lively and interactive because of the banter between the two of you. I know we should co-host, Darlene? We should go on the road. I'm game. I would co-host with you.
Well, you know, I think Micheline and I have a lot in common, and I wanted to just comment on that. You know, I think that this concept of decluttering and planning in advance, I really want everybody to know, I'd say this is a fairly new concept. It's not something that really, you know, was thought about as much in the past, but it's really becoming a lot more popular. Also, because of COVID, just the professional organizing industry in general, what we've noticed is everybody's been at home with their stuff, right? Everybody is at home all the time with their stuff. So we're looking around, we're seeing it differently, it feels differently. And that's really why this conversation has become so much more prevalent over the past couple of years. And to the one individual's point that mentioned as well, you know, give your children the gift, I would so agree. Because many as well, a lot of people these days are just not interested in, they're becoming more minimalist. They're not as interested in having, for example, you know, all the teacups maybe that I kept from my grandmother and great grandmother and all these individuals. So the thought process is different. And so the types of possessions that they're wanting to hold on to are different. And so this is a real cultural shift and a different way of thinking. But it's definitely part of both aging at home and transitioning. And I am really an advocate for not waiting till the end, but trying to tackle it earlier on so that it's not a stressful event for everyone involved.
So one last comment from Mary. Tons of charities want those donations. So we don't have to think about our stuff going into landfills when there are the charities who are needing those and wanting those items.
Yeah.
Last thing to share, one thing my grandmother did, she lived to 95, that we all appreciated. We thought it was a little bit weird and unsettling at first. She would offer us stuff when we come to visit and we'd be like, no, let's not talk about it now. And then we quickly realized that it brought her great pleasure to have those conversations and not it be read in the will. And she actually wrote our names on the bottom of items as those decisions were made, which really made things easier for everyone involved. And at first, like I said, I wasn't a fan, but now we try to write our names on my mom's stuff all the time because my grandmother did that, but she's not quite ready for us to do that. But
Yeah.
we really like the idea.
Yeah, I love that idea. I actually had a client who wrote little cards to the individual, and inside the card they wrote the reason why they were giving this particular piece of furniture or item to this person, and then they taped the card like inside the furniture piece or behind the plate or whatever, so that when they actually receive that item, not only would they receive the item, but then they'd have this personal message from the individual and the reason why they wanted to pass it on. So I thought that was a really beautiful way of sharing it.
Oh, I love that. So one more comment. Wendy said her grandmother did the same. I'm sure there's a few of us whose grandmas did that. And Jenna shares Marketplace on Facebook is a great place to sell your treasures. And I think that's something we didn't touch on. You don't have to donate. You can sell things. And if you don't know, and I've had this question asked at the project about safe drop-offs, people who are maybe older, living alone, are not really keen on having somebody come to their home to make those marketplace selling options. But now our local police, I know in North Bay, allow you to, there's a specific designated parking spot that you can use as your pickup and drop off place for when you're selling items on Marketplace.
Yeah, so that's a perfect lead in to the next slide, actually. And so just to kind of add on to what Micheline was saying is that exactly that. A lot of times as well, people are not sure what would sell. That's another important piece, is determining what could you potentially sell, what you would need to donate, what you're potentially giving away to friends and family, and what you want to keep and bring with you. So when you're considering a relocation of any kind, first of all, not only is a timeline important, but an action plan is important so that you know what all the moving parts are. And again, who is on your team? So you might, for example, have somebody that helps you with listing items on Marketplace, or that is selling the items and potentially meeting up with people. And I love what the police station has done. It's made it so much easier for people to be able to do drop-offs and pickups from Marketplace. And another tip I would provide just along that line is, if you are selling items, have a pickup time at one time. So whatever items you're selling, I will meet you for pickup on Saturday at 1 o'clock. And this is the location at the police station. And then you're not having to kind of have multiple days where you're doing this particular task. You're in control of that selling piece. So you can choose when the pickup and or drop off would be. So I also want you to think about, if you were to look around your home right now, almost think about, and it's horrible to think about this, but if you're in a situation where potentially your house was on fire, what would be those things that you would automatically run for in your home? And that's the way you want to think about downsizing. You want to think about, what would I run to first in my home? What brings me the most joy? What is the most important to me? And then you also want to think in terms of a couple of suitcases, maybe 3, 4 large suitcases. And what would you be able to fit with regards to clothing, for example, in those suitcases? So sometimes if we think within those parameters, clothes for sure is one of them. If we think of that parameter of just, what could we fill in 3 or 4 large suitcases, and that's what we would decide to bring with us, it helps us with making those decisions. And again, somebody earlier brought it up, but I'm an advocate for this. Just start small. It doesn't have to be your whole house at once. It doesn't have to be a whole room at once. It can be just a very small portion of your home. And I really like to use the kitchen as an example. If we think of just a kitchen drawer, for example, like this one, and this one is a good example. Look at all the spatulas in that drawer. I myself just recently went through one of my own kitchen drawers and I counted out 11 spatulas. And I was like, how did I end up with 11 spatulas? And when I looked at them, I know I don't use all those 11 spatulas all the time. So when I really went through and took a look at what was there, there were many that I could donate or relocate to another home. And so really just think in terms of small spaces and short periods of time at once. So maybe 15 to 30 minutes a day or an hour a couple of times a week. Start with a particular schedule where you know you're going to tackle small spaces in your home in short periods of time, and then just leave it be, and then another day move on to another area. And it's a really great way of starting the process in advance. So I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Marie Kondo, but she really speaks about, what sparks joy in your home. So like I said earlier, if you had to, in an emergency situation, run through your home and grab the 10 to 20 things that mean the most to you, then what would those items be? And it's the 80-20 rule. We use 20% of our items, and that includes clothing, 80% of the time. So when we think about that again, we use 80% of only 20% of our items. So if we look around our homes and all of the things that we have and our closets, for example, we really are only utilizing 20% of all of that, majority of the time. And so it's a really good rule to remember, because when we're struggling to make decisions, that's a really key piece to kind of bring back. A little tip for you for closets is flip your hanger around the other side, so that at the beginning of the year, maybe in January, you flip the hanger around, and then, 3-4 months down the road, you'll know by just the direction of the hangers which clothing items that you have used. And it's a really great tip to kind of trick you on knowing, hey, I haven't actually worn this item in 6 months or a year or what have you. And so is it something that I still want to keep in my closet? Does it still spark joy? And earlier we talked about items to sell. And sometimes we're not sure whether or not there's an item that's valuable in our home. So if you already know that there's items in your home that are valuable, make a little note under the plate, or in direction to your family, so that they know, and then also have a valuation of those items done. If it's an antique, have it assessed so that you know before selling what the value is. It's really important to have a support system when you're looking at doing any decluttering or downsizing, because our home is full of things that we love. And so we often get stuck sometimes when we're taking a look at the different things that we might want to let go of. And we need that extra encouragement and a different point of view to just kind of help us keep focused on the goal ahead. So Micheline, I'm going to pause just here for a second, because I can see there's some more items in the chat as well.
Yeah, so we have Mary who raised her hand. So Mary, I'm going to allow you to talk here. I'm just going to click the allow to talk. You should see the mute or unmute button, which would allow you to just be able to speak. I'm sure you have the ability to speak, and I'm not giving you that. I just mean on this webinar. I'm not sure if that worked for you, Mary. I'll just, Mary, hopefully you're able to unmute your system so you can make your comment. Oh, she didn't raise her hand. Okay. No problem. So I have a couple of comments here. So Senyeda is one of our students. So glad that she's able to join these sessions. I just love Mary Kondo, and she lets us know the close relationship we have emotionally with our stuff. And
Yes.
most of the time we don't need that stuff anymore, but there's that emotional connection. Wendy offers taking pictures of items that you're unsure about helps to keep them without keeping them. So taking pictures of things like mementos and so on. And then we have another comment by Lacha. Does anyone have a suggestion for a good home for a piano? Man, that's a good one. We'll throw that out to the group if anybody has an idea on that. And then, yeah, so Janice, I think answered, you can advertise on Marketplace, you know, looking to rehome a piano.
Yeah.
You can do that on Marketplace for sure. But I think you're thinking maybe in terms of an organization. Is that what you're thinking more, Lacha? If anybody knows of an organization who'd want a piano as well.
I do know that pianos are a little bit harder to get rid of, but there's definitely an audience for that. And I would agree with whoever suggested that Marketplace or Kijiji. I would also recommend going to any of the local music stores and see if they're aware of someone who might be looking for a piano. And they may also be aware of perhaps piano teachers within the community that may know of clients that are looking to purchase their own piano.
Great. You're clear
And
to go.
to the point about Marie Kondo, yes, you're 100% right. And you know, that's why the decision making is difficult, is because it's not usually about the item itself. It's usually about what's associated with the item. So there's some sort of memory or there's some sort of trigger that the item has for us in either a positive or negative way. And oftentimes it's because it's positive. And that's the reason why we're not wanting to necessarily let go. And also someone suggested photos, and it's a great idea. If you have china, perhaps specialty vases, you know, any kind of memorabilia that perhaps you would want to keep, and you can just basically keep it in a photo book or in a binder with sheets. And it's a great way of kind of keeping those items alive and with you without actually having to have the item in place. And that brings me, it's a good connection to precious memories and memorabilia. A lot of times, you know, memorabilia is the place where we really get stuck. And photos are a great example of that. Because, you know, they represent our life, they represent our experiences, and we like to go back and look at these pieces and review them. And there's really a lot of more efficient strategies these days to take care of photos and to store photos than photo albums. And I can provide solutions to anybody who is interested. There are actually even professional photo organizers that can restore photos that are in the old albums, you know, where we used to have the glued albums. And there's all sorts of tips and tricks to be able to manage these sorts of photos in particular. But photos are also hard because now we have analog and we also have digital photos. So a lot of us have many, many digital photos that we also need to consider organizing and sometimes decluttering, as well as we might have this analog style where we physically have still a photo album or just pockets of photos like you can see here. And this is actually an example, a personal example. And there were 3 shelves of photos like this. This is how they were organized in the client's home. And so they were downsized considerably into 3 very small containers. And then also photos were shared with other people within the family and to see if they wanted to have those photos as well. It's a very time-consuming project, photos. And if anybody is looking for tips, I have a free tip sheet, Michelin, as well, that I can send out to people. It's a great winter project. I know many people who have worked on this project throughout a winter season, and it's a great little project to tackle a little bit every day. I'm just going to pause there for a second.
Yeah, do you have a website or a Facebook page where these resources are available that we can direct people to?
Yeah, hellodarlene.ca is my website, and you can request any of my free downloadables there. I have a downsizing checklist. I have a managing your photos checklist as well that are all complimentary for anybody to receive.
What was that again? Hellodarlene.ca?
Hellodarlene.ca, yeah. And it's at the very end of my slides as well, and I'll pop it in the chat as well. So, you know, we can't plan for everything in life, but planning does provide peace of mind for not only yourself, but for all of those around you. And more importantly, it's about communicating your plan to others that actually reduces that stress. It also helps with the understanding of what your needs are if there is ever an emergency of some kind. It also helps people to advocate and support you if they're having to navigate our complex healthcare system. And then senior living advisors like myself at Hello Darlene, we can assist with referrals to vetted network partners for health and home care services. And also senior living coordination lets you rest easy. And I feel very strongly about making sure that referrals are vetted so that, you know, anybody who's utilizing services, you know, so that we know, you know, they're an insured business, they're registered, you know, they have a good reputation. And a lot of times good examples are, you know, if you're hiring someone to potentially plow your driveway, you know, it's not a question we always ask, you know, are you insured? But if something was to happen when they were providing that service, you know, what would be the consequence? And that's just a little tip that I always focus on when I'm referring anyone to one of my clients. I like to make sure that they're, you know, a reputable service and that they're an insured business. I'm just going to pause here for a second again, Micheline. Make sure there's nothing in the chat.
No, I think we're good.
Okay,
Good to keep
so I want to move, sorry, go ahead.
No, good to go ahead, sorry.
Okay, perfect. So I also want to talk about legacy planning. And also, you know, when we're making a plan, a lot of the time we consider our spouse as that individual who would be our power of attorney or a caregiver. It could also be a family member that we have in place. But I want you to consider, how would that plan change if that spouse or family member, all of a sudden, if their health status changed? And so how would that change your plan? How would it change your finances? And when would your plan B come into play? So when you're thinking of aging at home and all of the types of resources that you might potentially need, you may not, but if you potentially need them, when for you would you feel that a transition would be comfortable? And it's important to have that conversation so that everybody is on the same page that's in your circle. And also to make sure that you have an alternate power of attorney, just in case, like on your power of attorney, so that you name an alternate as well. Because if something does happen and that alternate needs to come into play, then that's beautiful. You have one in place versus having to go and revise your power of attorney. And not everyone does have an alternate in place. Many people will assign one person, but they don't always assign an alternate. So legacy planning is really a conversation beyond the will. This is a service that Hello Darlene provides. It really is a conversation that talks about everything from A to Z, about your home, pets potentially, aging at home, the documents that your caregivers or potential powers of attorney might need, all of the different kinds of things that are involved, all the what ifs, if you know, potentially something would happen, or just even if they were having to support you while you're aging at home. You know, small things like, you know, who has a key to your home? You know, does a housekeeper have a key to your home? I had a client who told me they had a housekeeper 5 years ago and they had just remembered when we had our conversation. that they had forgotten to get that house key from that person. So it's those kinds of things that you want to be thinking of that's beyond the will and the power of attorney when you're thinking about legacy planning. So really, advanced planning and document organization is really, it's an act of love for your power of attorney and for any executors or for anyone who might be a caregiver. It really just helps them with executing your wishes without stress. We are professional organizers registered with Professional Organizers of Canada. So we are experts and we help you to coordinate all of those important documents in one convenient and catalog location, which is our legacy plan organizer. It's a very easy to use system. We have a discovery and a review of all of your existing estate planning documents for potential updates. We review all of your life events over the past number of years to see what you might need to change. And of course, again, it's a way for you to document all of those final wishes and a way for you to be able to communicate with your family what your wishes are, and so that there can be a conversation about what might happen in the future and what you would like to have happen in the future. And you may be surprised at some of the conversation that would come up, you know, around some of these different topics. They're tough topics to talk about, but I think your family transparent about all of these different topics. So this is Hello Darlene. So we provide a holistic approach to helping our clients. There's no, you know, one way to help each client. It really varies depending on their needs, from whether or not they're looking at retirement location and looking for some guidance around a retirement living facility, or aging in place, downsizing, and we really love to connect seniors to services. And we've heard about so many wonderful services in our community today. And of course, we have a unique service that we offer, which is legacy planning. And that's really, you know, really that came about from my experience of being in banking for over 34 years and dealing with so many powers of attorneys and executors who were unsure of the processes and what they needed to do, and found that they were very stressful. So that's one of the reasons why I created that service, is from my personal work experience over so many years. And so really, I just want you to think about, you know, planning today is really for tomorrow. It's sort of one of those things where once it's communicated, it's done, and then everybody is on the same page. And it can be a complex future. So it's great if you can spend some time thinking about it, even if it is daunting in some way. And Hello Darlene is here to help you in whatever way possible. We can help you a little bit or a lot, and in any one of those capacities. And at the bottom of the slide here, you can see there is my telephone number, my website address, and my email address. All of my initial consultations are complimentary, where we can just talk about what's going on and what support you may need. And I offer that to all of my clients.
So we have a few comments in chat. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I know Wendy's going to wrap us up at the end, but before we get over to Wendy, I just wanted to mention a couple things. So Photo Metro offers a service to convert old movies to format on DVD. So that's just a great service shared. Also, Mary says, get those techie kids to help you put slides onto USB. Peggy asks, this is a question for you, Darlene. Do you have a blank template for planning, as mentioned in the beginning of your talk? Is that one of the free downloadables, is the actual sort of blank template for planning?
So is it for planning just in general, or for one of the particular services?
The question is just about, it just says planning, a template for planning.
So I don't have a template, like for example, a document that I can give you that would help you plan. But what I would say is, the binder systems that I provide are essentially that. It's a guidebook that walks you through all of the different categories. And I do customize these binders based on the kind of transition that you're going through or who the binder is for. And so, for example, sometimes the system or the consultation is being purchased by the actual power of attorney or caregiver. And sometimes it's actually being purchased by the individual. So it depends on who is kind of making that inquiry as to how I customize it. But it's better to just have a consultation with me and I can let you know exactly what I would be able to provide to you.
And we'll end with one final comment here from Lacha Hives. Darlene, this is a beautifully paced and informative. You have a lovely and reassuring way of connecting with your audience. So there's some nice feedback.
Aww. Well, thank you so much to whoever said that. That's so wonderful. And, you know, I have to honestly say I have lived this journey on a personal level. And so the creation of this business really came from myself being a caregiver and someone who was very familiar with not only the documents, but a lot of these processes, and still recognized that sometimes when you're in the chaos of these transitions, you know, it just doesn't, you just require some support and some help. And so I really created the business to help support individuals in my community, not only give them to services, but also just help reduce stress. So yeah, so it's unique and customized, and I'm very authentic when I say that I have walked this journey. And so I know what it feels like to feel difficult, and I know what it feels like when it feels lighter. And so I really bring those experiences with me to the table when I'm interacting with any clients.
So thanks very much, Darlene, for bringing your thoughts. Lots of content here, lots of discussions and thinking that I think is going to go on amongst all of us that attended today. So thank you very much for that. I think my favorite little nugget is the plan for the unexpected, because nothing is written in stone. Nobody knows what the days ahead hold. So great advice. So thank you very much for joining us today. And I gather, is there any last minute thoughts you have to share, Micheline, before we close the meeting?
No, just keep inviting people to these sessions. There's still 2 more days of awesome informative sessions coming. Check out the website. And I just have to make one more comment that came up in chat. Janice Reed said, Darlene, she's known you since you were a single lady working at Canada Trust in the North Bay Mall. I mean, that is a cool thing to add to the end here. I have a really good image that goes with that. So thank you. So that's the end of my comments.
Thank you so much, Janice. That's so lovely of you. Yeah, that's back in the day. It's so true. I was Canada Trust before I was TD Bank. So yeah, that's lovely.
Okay.
And you know, if for anybody who's attending today, I know a lot of these things are very individualized. So please feel free to reach out. Like I say, an initial consultation is always complimentary. I have done this often for individuals, you know, we haven't needed to go any further, but sometimes individuals do. But your individual situation is sometimes easier to explain one-on-one. So feel free to call in a confidential way and ask any other questions that you may have.
Okay. So thanks again, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.